Man, this one really broke my heart, man. Little Big Planet servers are being shut down.
Hmm.
Well, for Little Big Planet 3. And I've been a fan of the game of the series since Little Big Planet 1. Like, that was an experiment. I was really looking for something new during the
Hmm.
PS3 era. And I just love what I came across. Like, the whole play, create, share world. And it's just like the arrival of a new Sony mascot character that honors everybody else. You had the costumes, you had the Kratos costume, you had the Sly Cooper costumes, and you had costumes from different IPs, and the level of creativity and physics of just the worlds that people built, man, it was just very beautiful. And of course, they followed up with a sequel, which, like, sometimes when they announce a sequel, but it's literally 1.5, like, no, this was
Yeah.
a step up. Like, this was a part two. And of course, it was by Medium Molecule. But then, after Little Big Planet 2, they moved, and other Little Big Planet deviations like the PSP, PlayStation Vita, they moved on to other projects. So Sony gave Little Big Planet over to another company to produce, and they came out with Little Big Planet 3. A lot of people were very excited about the game. Yes, when it came out, it had a lot of technical issues in terms of the online. Certain times it would kick you out of games. They also had some issues with hackers, but overall, I mean, you would think, with the numerous patches that it got, like it was actually pretty good. But then you did start to see that there was a decline in the series compared from 2 to 3.
Hmm.
Um, is One of the biggest like red flags for me was one day they were saying that some of the costumes were about to be delisted from the store. And
Hmm.
then, it kind of reminded me of Marvel versus Capcom all over again. Like, yeah, there's some things, I guess there's issues with licensing, like, cause, especially when there's costumes from other IPs, they may be timed.
Right.
So, it, but then, afterwards, I thought it was fine. I really thought it was fine. They had a closing out DLC. Um, and then even, in with the introduction of, PlayStation 4 and, the PS5 era, um, there was a new one. It was called Sackboy's Big Move, I believe. Yeah, it's called Sackboy's Big Move. Sackboy's Big Adventure, of course.
Hmm.
So I mean, but then I realized this one was a bit different. This one felt more like a platformer, like similar to Astro Bot. Like it wasn't really about let's create this beautiful world together and you just find your way through the madness. Um, it still had that spirit, but you could tell like most of the costumes were focused about like Sony mascots because I guess they learned their lesson about the licensing issues. But then the issue was, man, recently we got the news that Dill servers are going to be cut for Little Big Planet 3. So I mean, but when you really think about it, that means they're cutting the service for Little Big Planet 3 and everything that came with Little Big Planet 1 and 2 because it was a shared universe. So basically, whenever they upped their game, all that stuff from 1 and 2 crossed over to 3. All the levels attached to the servers, everything was there. And it's horrible, man. Like it's like watching like an entire forest just get chopped away and
Hmm.
it's no more and they just turn it into something else and just say forget about it. Like so many people put so much hard work into that and it kind of just feels like abandonment, like when you really look at it. That yes, I'm happy for the success of Astrobot, but it goes back to the same question of like, when it comes to Sony is you kind of just find a new favorite and then you just let everything that built up your reputation with the people that you have you just abandon it when you really look
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because my thing about it is, all right, if Little Big Planet servers was really getting severe hackings, why didn't Sony step in to solve the issue in terms of infrastructure or online sustainability? Why didn't you step in to save your product? Why did you not give them the resources necessary to do it? So it's a very heartbreaking story, man, and I am upset, man, because this was a franchise that really, I would say, kind of saved the PS3 to me. It really did. Like the PS3 was going through like a very, especially when the hacking of the network came around, bro. That was just a very horrible limbo to be in. And then, of course, the PS4 came around. Sony had much better momentum and made much better decisions. But now we kind of feel like that era, they got very full of themselves. And then, of course, the launch of the PS5 as well, that you're starting to see that very egotistic type of demeanor. And it's just like wow, like, man, there's so many things that you can nurture, but then you do foolishness with it on the other side. The due date is coming up. A lot of people are trying to download it and enjoy it for what it is for now, but man, that's a lot of memories just gone.
Because it's also getting delisted, right, after that? Or it's
being delisted as well.
And that was the thing that caused the eyebrow raise for me. Of like, I don't understand how in an era where literally not even a month ago, right? Literally not a month, let's say a month ago, you had one of the Sony execs saying that we don't have enough IP for this generation cycle. Like, you literally just said, like, we're kind of like in a weird place where we don't have enough IP for our brand. And given like the success of Astro Bot, you would think that like, okay, we need something to pivot to that isn't always a blockbuster, that isn't always including a male.
I take that response. It's not being delisted. It's just the online servers are being cut, but then that is the lifeline to this game.
Okay. So, I mean, it's kind of like when they're like Resistance 3 will no longer be online. It's like, well, then what are we talking about here? Like, I can't, how many times can I play the campaign at that point? Like Resistance 3, the multiplayer was the lifeblood of the game. So my point still stands. Like, just because you have access to it, I mean, at least for now, right? Given the practices that we've seen from these companies, it just goes in hand in hand of like, it's just a weird play from Sony of like, we spoke in the group chat about building customer loyalty, right? Where I think one of the things that Nintendo does really, really well is, for a fact and for certain that you at some point will get a Mario game and a Zelda game, no matter what, right? It's just certain flagship characters that they're going to keep bringing around. And I feel like with Sony, that has, kind of roll with the punches, but definitely have had a problem establishing themselves in terms of like a long-term character base, let's say, with their properties. It's like you need to be holding on to these things as much as you possibly can, right? There's nothing about Sackboy that shows as like a sign of its time. You know what I'm saying? Where like there's certain games where you're like, hey, would Goomba work this? Like in this generation, probably not, right? Like there's a certain character, there's certain IPs that were like, yo, as much people ask for Banjo and Kazooie to come back, I'm like, listen, it's just, Conker's bad for a day. That's it. All right. Like there's a certain characters I'm like, I was then and this is now. But I feel like with Sony, it's like, what about Sackboy would not translate with the Gen Zs or the whatever the next generation is called? What about this does not help hype up your kids division or people who just enjoy simpler style games that you wouldn't want to preserve? You know what I'm saying? Like even for somebody like me who didn't really play LittleBigPlanet, I'm like, I don't see why you would remove this as an option as a Sony first party title.
Yeah, and then like I said, man, it kind of just feels like they found a shiny new toy, which is Astro Bot, and it's like, all right, yeah, time to cut it. And yes, there's a big argument. Well, Sackboy's Big Adventures available on the PS5, but then it's like, bro, that's not the same. It's not the same type of layout as it was before. It's just a platformer that you just play. It's very similar to Astro Bot. Like you go through stages, hop, skip, pounce. Have a good time with friends, but it's not the same level of creativity invested like how the previous ones were, which was the soul of the game. And it just really makes me wonder is like, what is to really come for the future, man?